Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leverton on Everything podcast. I'm your host, Adam, and this is Everything, a podcast where I literally review everything. Today, I'm going to talk about 2012's true crime film called The Imposter. And I got rid of Netflix, I don't know, maybe about 6 months ago. And I bring that up because I was watching a lot of true crime on Netflix. And it's weird because Netflix will buy like movies and generally other content from different perspectives, right? But when it comes to true crime, they're really like focused on kind of having one voice and one tone of true crime documentaries, which are generally like sort of flashy and sensationalistic. For example, like the Tinder Swindler or Don't F with Cats or Bitcon, some of which I have reviewed on this channel. But they don't have time for more kind of retrospective and more analytical and kind of deeper true crime. And this film, The Imposter, is exactly the antithesis, hard word to say, antithesis of Netflix true crime, because it is deep, it is introspective, and it asks a lot of questions without actually answering any of them. So in 1997, there was a case where a family whose child was missing, Nicholas Barkley, got reunited with their child. And it was a very great moment and everybody was really, really happy. But it turned out that this child was not a child, but was a 23-year-old French guy pretending to be some child from Texas. And the child had been missing for maybe about 5 years, had blue eyes, and was blonde. And this imposter had dark hair, which he dyed, but you could see the roots. Brown eyes, which obviously not the same, and had a much darker complexion because he was the son of a French woman and an Algerian man. Also, he had I'm not sure if he had it at the time in 1997, but he had like darker pigmentation around his nose. So clearly it was not the same guy, and he spoke with a French accent. So the whole film talks about and shows how this imposter got to Texas and how this Texas family wanted to adopt him. And the way that he got to Texas is kind of very creepy. Like, he started a life of crime where he was routinely pretending to be a child so that he could be sent to children's homes and children protective services. And he says in the film that it's connected to some sort of lack of love in his childhood. Maybe, but maybe there was an ulterior motive for him as well to be hanging out with children. Because eventually he gets sent to high school in America and he's really, really excited. Like, what if other French adult man can go to a American high school? So he had led this life of crime, but it's really strange all of the ways that he ended up in Texas. Because first he calls the Spanish police and he says that there's some kid and he needs help. And he didn't look like a kid when the police found him. He looked like a young adult, right? So, but the police were like, oh yeah, that story makes sense. So they contact the American consulate, and, you know, well, first the police pick up the kid, and he's like, oh, can you leave me alone in this office for the night, and I'll try and contact my family. It's like, that's not how that's supposed to work. So he does a little bit of research over the night, and he discovers that there's this one kid missing named Nicholas Barclay, and he gets like a fax. And the fax, of course, kind of looks like him because it's a fax, and if you don't remember faxes, they're basically like, they connected the printer to the telephone, and you could transmit images over the printer. So like usually they're black and white and not very good quality. So he uses this to say, okay, yeah, he's Nicholas Barclay, and then he finds out that he's blonde, and then he has tattoos, so he gets tattoos done. He gets the blonde thing done. And for some reason, the American consulate is like, and they interviewed him, and he was like, yes, our priority is to reunite children with their families. And it's like, but you didn't actually interview the guy, right? Because I think as much as you want to reunite families with their missing children, you need to make sure that it's actually the right kid first, right? Because if the child is telling the truth and the child has had some traumatic experience, maybe he doesn't remember exactly where he's from, you know? And why would a random American kid be in Spain? You know, like, I think it goes to this myth about child trafficking, that there's like this international network, and there's people who like, just take kids. And it probably does happen. I mean, Epstein is a really good example, but those were people who were hired. You can see with the Epstein example is how much effort and infrastructure it actually takes. So you need to be like rich, you need to be powerful, and you need to have all of these things. So it's probably not true that if some rich guy kidnapped Nicholas Barclay and was using him, that he would just leave him in Spain, or this organization or whatever would just leave him in Spain. So that's like the first red flag. Second red, like there's multiple red flags. And then they reunite. So the sister flies to Spain to speak with Nicholas. And of course, the imposter is like, oh. Like, from the way he says it, he seems to be caught up into like a situation that is far beyond his control because he's lying about something, which is true, but he was like 100% aware of what he was doing, and he wanted to see, I think, how far he could get away with this con, because that was the nature of the con. So he goes to Texas, and this is where the situation gets really weird, because he's speaking with a French accent, right? And he looks different. His nose is different. His complexion is different. He's got dyed blonde hair. Everything looks different, but, he has the same tattoos, which maybe, but also the kid had, I don't remember how old Nicholas Barclay was when he disappeared, but if he was old enough to have tattoos, that means he's old enough to have like his accent in English for the rest of his life. Like, for example, I've been living in Poland for 20 years, and I still have this accent when I speak in English. So, you can't get rid of that unless you're taken when you're like a young child, And eventually that's what the FBI expert says. But why not have the FBI expert interview the guy before reuniting with the family? So that was really weird. But the family also is like, yes, it's Nicholas, it's Nicholas. And then everybody, so Nicholas's sister, Nicholas's brother-in-law, and Nicholas's mom all believe that this is Nicholas. And Nicholas's older brother comes back and says, he doesn't say anything, but it's pretty clear that he knows that it's not his younger brother. And so I should tell you the imposter's real name is Frédéric Bourdin, or Bourdin, or something. Frédéric, let's just call him Frédéric. So Frédéric, at this point, he knows the jig is up, and he has like a short, limited amount of time. But he goes on television, and he like gets more, because he starts telling this like crazy story about like this international child smuggling ring and how he's been abused, and like the FBI lady was like, oh, there's no way that somebody could invent a story like that. The details were just too troubling. But come on, people can invent a whole bunch of troubling stories. So, I mean, she was suspicious all along, which was good, but she should have been more suspicious from the beginning. Because again, as I said, the fake child, was reunited with the real family. So, Frederick's point is like, why wouldn't they say that I wasn't the real Nicholas? I looked completely different. Why didn't they say anything? And there's a point where the FBI agent tells the sister that it's not the real Nicholas, and the sister's like, "Oh, I don't care," and they go back to the family, and the FBI has to like get a warrant to get a blood test, and then the mom is like lying down and refusing to get a blood test. So on the one hand, you could say that was a reaction to the trauma of the situation, of what was happening. But on the other hand, maybe Frédéric is right, because Frédéric says that Nicholas was probably murdered by the older brother. And they interview the mom and the sister, and the sister and the mom are like, oh, I forgot what the older brother's name was, but there's no way, like he's dead now, but there's no way that he could do it because he just didn't have it in his heart. But mind you, these 3 witnesses are very unreliable because they can't even recognize their own brother, brother-in-law, and child. So, what happened to the real Nicholas Barkley? That's a good question, and nobody knows the answer. And there's this one PI who, he's suspicious of Frédéric from the very first, and then he meets with Frédéric, and Frédéric says, oh, I think that they killed the real Nicholas Barkley. And so he goes to where they used to live, and he just starts digging up a hole because he thinks that there might be a body there. And it's hard to come away with any kind of conclusions from this story. But I think that the feeling that I get is when people are overestimating their competence in areas. And so I think like the real, apart from the actual imposter, the real perpetrators of the situation are the American establishment in Spain, the Spanish police, the FBI, and this, because they should have known in the beginning that it wasn't him. And then there's another part, which is like the Nicholas Barkley's mom and his sister say like, why? So the theory is that we accepted this imposter into our home to cover up the fact that we murdered Nicholas, but for years we were the only people looking for Nicholas. And I think that's true. So I think that's the big problem, is that like a lot of missing kids and missing people like just slip through the cracks because nobody cares enough. Because if it's not like a cute white girl, nobody cares. And I think that's unfortunately true. And there was another I forgot what it's called, but there was a serial killer in Long Island, and basically the victims were all prostitutes, and it took so long for that case to be closed because of who the victims were. So this is again another situation where Nicholas Barkley was a troubled teen basically, who was getting in more and more trouble, and he ran away. And the police were like, "Oh yeah, he ran away." So I'm not sure if he was murdered by his brother. Um, the brother is dead, so we'll never be able to interview him. But clearly he disappeared, and clearly he mattered to people enough that they would kind of really want him to come back. So I think that's the tragedy of it. I don't believe that his sister and his mom were. I don't think that they had anything to do with Nicholas's death. I just think that they were so traumatized by it that they were willing to lie to themselves that this imposter, who clearly wasn't Nicholas, was Nicholas. But anyway, I would give this film like an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. So check it out. Thank you. Bye-bye.